Thanks. Our next guest is Luc. And Luc, you're going to tell us about your first trip. Is that right?
Yeah, because I have done various kinds of psychedelics, like ayahuasca, like LSD, but there's a thing about your first trip.
So when was this?
This was about 88. It's for my age, I'm 48 now. Fairly recently, was about 38, 39 at the time, and it happened in America. I was on a spiritual quest, so to speak. I had some experiences due to Zen meditation. I went to a place called Esalen, which is a retreat center along the coast in California. A very beautiful place, where there are great teachers, and I met some very interesting people there. And I did a week of Zen meditation, which is like sitting, and then there's a guy who keeps you, say, concentrated on your meditation. After that week, I had spontaneous open-eye hallucinations, or at least a vision, and I got to some kind of... I went outside and I climbed some rock, and I had quite an experience that. So that was when I began to understand that it was another reality. But then about 2 months later, or a month later, I decided that... by talking to many other people, that the psychedelic experience could lead to the same experience. So I decided to consult a brocha, how you say that, a witch, a woman who was very experienced body worker and had some fame as a person who would guide you through a trip. Mm-hmm. And I had never done it. And so I spoke with her, and she said, yeah, we will do it, but please realize this is a heavy thing. And I'm not with you to do a minimum dose, a recreational dose. This is going to be a big jump. I said, okay. So what are we going to take? Well, she said, well, we'll start with mushrooms, and then we give you some LSD and whatever. And it turned out she was quite experienced in administering a whole range of psychedelics.
All on the same dose?
No. This was a whole experience of actually a night and a morning. Uh-huh. So what happens is that, well, to purify yourself first, don't eat the evening before. And we were staying in a cabin on the Californian coast, and very beautiful. And she said, well, okay, now it was like 8 o'clock in the evening. She said, take some stuff, and you go out on that hill down there, and then on the top you sit and see the sun go down in the sea. You stay there all night. Oh, and by the way, here's a rope, and there was a rope with hair on, a fairly hairy rope. And she said, you take that, and you make sure that on that thing you put it around you. You take it in your hands, and you put it around you. I said, why? She said, well, for the snakes. Because the snakes would come to the rope, notice it's a human thing, and would turn back.
Wow.
So I went there, and there were all kinds of coyotes or whatever on that mountain, and whatever. I was kind of scary. I was there alone, and it was a preparation. So I knew about meditation, about chanting mantras and stuff like that. So I spent the night on that hill. Then at around 6 o'clock I came down to that place, and she had a plate with mushrooms.
Uh-huh.
Now,
so up till this point you hadn't taken...
I have never taken any drugs, except when I was about 16 or 17. I must have smoked some marijuana at a party, and I remember getting very, very ill behind a stove. I was 17, and I thought, Jesus, well, this is not. Well, I never smoked. Yeah. Of course, I'd been drunk, which you can say is a kind of inebriation similar to it. But I never smoked.
But then at 6 o'clock in the morning is when you started to eat the mushrooms.
Yes.
Okay.
And she gave me so much. I said, hey, man, this is enough. She said no. And she did a ritual with that. I mean, so we prayed and we chanted, and we made sure, or she made sure, that I was in the right frame. Yeah? In the right setting. Mm-hmm. Set and setting, as Tim Leary would say. It was really, I was prepared. Mm-hmm. In fact, my son was there. He was 13 at the time, and he was staying in the same cabin. He knew what was happening, and he was told. He was part of the ritual. Later, he went away, but it was really a very conscious decision, and that's what I later would say to other people, make this decision if you want to take it, a conscious one, and do it, and don't do it like a little bit at a party, as we've seen before in this program. There's many people that take it, and then they're frightened by the experience because it's so heavy. No, this was going to be a heavy one. I knew it, but I wanted to find out, because I had this same, later I would say I had the same experience, I didn't know at the time, as I had when I had this Zen meditation in induced trance state. Unitive experience. And so what in fact happened is she made me eat a lot. I thought, this is too much, a whole plate, wow. And she said, no, don't go for the little dose. I did it, I laid down, she made me lie. She said, you have to have a time in separation. And I had a time in separation. She just, little side cabin. I was there alone, pretty dark. And I had first open eye. I mean, you come to a state where you don't know whether your eyes are open, where you are, what you are, but you are in a different world. Later she came in, and she would help me, guide me. Say, well, think about your parents. Think about when you were young. She would guide me. At a certain moment she would say, well, you're not deep enough. I didn't give you enough mushrooms, so she gave me some LSD. Even much more later, she gave me a massage. She taught me about where my chakra, where my energy were. Really a very complex process. It took a long time. She said, okay, now feel this. Bring your energy there. Now, and if you're stoned, if you're in this level of being on a trip, it's like, wow, the devils go there and whatever, and you really feel everything. It was quite extraordinary. At one time, she took a little bit of DMT, which she smoked and then blew in my nose. Wow. Like the Indians do. So she smoked it, which gave me a sudden experience of a whole different kind. But this was, so in fact, about a 6 to 8 hour experience.
With mushrooms, acid, and DMT.
Yes, and I'm not sure she didn't put in some side effects. Maybe I even smoked some marijuana to dampen it down in the end. But a total trip, yeah.
And do you remember any of your hallucinations?
Oh yeah, at first, I remember the first thing, I was in like a church. This little black cabin became immensely high, and all the colors that I knew from Gothic churches. The colors. I mean, I then realized that I later realized that the colors in Gothic churches resemble the things you experience in a trip. And then that turned into an Aztec or a Mayan temple. And the funny thing is, whatever I thought became alive. I would think about a certain person, and that person would kind of materialize there, and not as a solid thing, but something that was really there. Well, hallucinations, it's really a very strong experience. And what remains with me till today is the fact that reality is not what it is. Really, reality isn't there.
Yeah.
It's an illusion. I mean, at that moment, I thought I was in totally different places, and I wasn't. Like, one of the things she did later was do a guided meditation, which is you're stoned and someone tells you, well, okay, close your eyes and imagine you're now on a cloud and you go up in the sky and you visit your ancestors and you solve your problems of your life. There's a box and the big riddle of your life is in there. And you go and look and then you find some tool. I said, hey, what's this? It's a dog. I found a dog. And then suddenly I remembered that when I was about 6 or 7, I got a dog from my parents that I was supposed to take care of, and they took it away after 3 days. And it was really a traumatic experience. So I dig that up, that experience was still there, that was something I had to take care in my relationship with my parents.
Which I imagine is an incident that you hadn't thought about in some time, huh?
Yeah, I said, why do I have a dog? Why do I find... Suddenly, things about my grandmother, her role in my life, really, there were both very practical, traumatic experience, and there was this feeling of total unity with a wider reality beyond all these thousands of universes that you would go through. You know, it's like an unfolding richness of well, you see some of these modern computer graphics things. You go in there and well, that's the same. It's like a myriad of colors that you could never describe. Go in there and find it. Really, whatever you thought of would come. we would think about crosses. Well, then the movements would change, and then suddenly you were in a church maybe with crosses, or in a place where there were crosses, or on Golgotha. Yeah, endless travels. The sense of time would go. Now this was a heavy trip, and it went with this woman. She would kind of look at your chakras, and she had a belief that, like LSD works on your vision, but that really is your liver. It's a liver drug. DMT is more of a throat drug, and there are other, like ecstasy would. And she would administer, and she say, well, you're blocked here or there, and she would administer a drug that would go on that specific point. Yeah, so she would look at where you're. She was a body worker, so I was naked in the bed. I must tell you. I mean, it was, and she would put my back and say, okay, stretch this, do this, and then feel where my blocking was, and say, hey, stretch this, and then you would suddenly feel, or, pull your back, pull this, and you would feel that there was a block.
Well, that's quite an advantage to have a guide like that.
Yes, I would advise anybody who takes a trip, the first trip, to do it in good settings, and this one was really, And I can imagine that in other cultures where taking trips like this with ayahuasca or whatever drugs they have, that they would do it in such a way that the so-called mysteries in the old Greece, where they had, we think, similar things, were set up in such a way that there was a guide, that there was a ritual. In fact, ayahuasca rituals that have been described, especially for the Santo Daime, they guide you in it. There is a structure that protects you from, say, jumping out of the window, that protects you from doing crazy things. So you feel safe, and there is a structure. Now, in my case, it was a personal thing. I felt privileged. I thought that's the way it should be done, and I learned a lot from it.
Can you tell us some of the things that you learned? Some insights or benefits you got from this experience?
Yeah, of course, one of the things is that the visuals during a trip are so much influenced by your thoughts, and that you are highly suggestible. If someone takes, for instance, she would run a tape with suggestions, like feel good, feel the white light and stuff like that. Now, I'm not a very good visualizer normally. I go to places and they tell me, lie down, see the light. I think, I'm more of a feeling person. I can say, hey, feel the sand, I can feel that, but I can't see it. But at that time, I would see the white light, and it was like, wow, this is it. So you are more hypnotizable, so to speak, more suggestible, very much so, which is a danger, because at that time, if some strange cult would come in and would say, hey, this is your master and you have to follow him, you would probably believe that. And that's, I think, how some cults, what we call cults here, are founded. Because at the moment that you are in this susceptible state, either by drugs or by the work you do with holotropic breathing or whatever, it's a dangerous situation. You have to have integrity around you. And if there is a strange energy, I remember some other trip that there was like a red and blue light, and I thought it was a police car. Man, you immediately are turned off. You think, oh, there's danger, there's police coming or whatever. The slightest suggestion works. If you're in a room and there's a smell, smells are very strong. Some pepper or whatever there was, the smell would bring you back to situations. It does in real life, and that's what I've learned. That, for instance, you are in a situation with other people, and what you think that you think doesn't influence them, forget about it. During a trip, you see that you can have communication without words. That person, that lady was sitting next to me, she would think things and I would say them, or vice versa. Which makes you think that in real life it probably happens, but we deny it, we push it away. All these colors, all this experience is normally, we are hiding behind some shield. We don't want it. It's there, but we don't want to see it. Inside, we have made a shield.
Mm-hmm. And so, how long after you started with the mushrooms did you finally feel like you were coming down?
I can't say, because the mushrooms took 20, 30 minutes. I must say I didn't eat all night, but it was an experience it lasted, I think, way into the afternoon. It's a good idea to start your trip early in the morning because it lasted way into the afternoon. I could sleep and swim, and in fact, during the trip, I took showers and I exercised, and it was a very bodily experience.
And so that night after this experience,
even now comes back is the feeling how I then took a shower and how that looked and how that I felt that water over my body, which was coming from the mountains, cold, and it comes back very vividly.
As though the acid actually somehow enhanced the relatively normal experience of taking a shower. Somehow it enhanced that, huh?
Yeah, the body awareness kind of was raised to a level where that you really felt that the water wasn't not only taking away the dirt, but also the debris of my thoughts. And I don't know, it was a different thing.
And so that night, after you came down from the drug, were you able to sleep normally?
Yes, I was quite tired. I must have gone to sleep afterwards. But that was the nice thing because, in the evening eat something and then you go to bed and you sleep it out.
Okay. And then how did you feel the next day?
For a few days, there's the process of reintegration. Really, you found out things and you don't know where to place them. It was a quiet environment. We drove around a little bit through the mountains. Very beautiful place there. Integration, slowly beginning to see that there is a connection with real life. That the things that happen in real life are just ignored. That the energies that you feel from people, from situations, from forms are still there. But so I became more aware. That's the whole story.
And so you felt like you got a permanent benefit of being more aware as a result of this?
Yeah, and more integrated, because I had that experience before, but I realized also, since that moment I realized that there is not much difference between a Zen meditation or a Christian mystic or a psychedelic experience. They all come into the same realm where reality is malleable, formable, where an idea about timelessness vanishes. You realize that something that is forever, in the sense of God, is there. It's not being there all the time. It is being out of time. That time has no meaning. That, well, as they say, part of this is all Maya, and it's not Maya. It's the mountain, and it's not the mountain. In that time I wrote this poem during an LSD experience, which was between me and the mountain. There is but God to enjoy.
Nice.
Which means there is me, there is the mountain, there's God. So that triangle between me as observer and the mountain, but who is observing who? And who is enjoying? Am I enjoying God? Yeah? Between me and the mountain, there's but God to enjoy. God is enjoying me, or I'm enjoying God, or is God the enjoyment? And then later I found out that in Sufi, the conceptual ideas about Sufis, this is very, very important, that there is the observer and the observed and the Godhead that takes a role in it. That triangle is the essence of life, the essence of consciousness. Not of life, but of when you experience God, that's it. When people say I am God, no, there is a God in the game. This process of observing, seeing these realities change and whatever is I think a fairly deeply religious and spiritual experience.
That's really quite something, that you can take a physical substance and have a spiritual experience.
Yeah. But some people say that the physical substance is in our mind all the time, so it's not strange to our chemistry.
Yeah. And do you have any further advice for people who might think about taking a psychedelic experience for themselves?
Yeah, don't take too little the first time. It's like, losing your virginity. There's only one first time. Yeah. And don't make it halfway. Don't make it, oh yeah, I felt something. And this first jump, do it safe. Do it in a good environment, a good set and setting, but go for it.
And with an experienced guide, if possible.
Yes.
Okay. Well, great. Okay, thanks a lot.
Okay.
Great to have you on the show.